Along the familiar village road, bamboo trees rustled in the wind, rice fields stretched endlessly to the horizon, and flocks of birds danced across the peaceful morning sky. In this simple countryside setting, there lived a young girl named Lan. Born and raised in a poor farming family, where people spent their whole lives tied to the fields. Lan didn't have much, but she carried a small dream in her heart: to own a motorcycle. Not a brand new one, just something old but reliable, strong enough to take her to school, to work, and perhaps even beyond the little dirt paths that led to the nearby town. That day, with the small amount of money she had carefully saved, Lan decided to go out and find herself a used motorcycle. She walked through narrow village lanes, visiting people she knew who collected and traded old bikes. In their yards, worn-out motorcycles stood silently, some covered in thick layers of dust, some rusted, some stripped of their parts. Lan looked at each one carefully, asking questions and listening to the stories behind them. Bikes that had carried farmers through many harvests or had once roamed far and wide with their owners. After a long search, Lan's eyes suddenly lit up when she spotted a SYM Wolf Classic 150cc leaning quietly in a corner. Its paint was scratched, the seat torn, the engine no longer smooth. Yet to her, the bike still carried a unique charm. Classic, strong, and full of soul. She slowly walked closer, gently placing her hand on the worn fuel tank, and whispered to herself, "Maybe. This is the one. This will be the bike I restore to begin a new journey." Determination shone in her eyes. And so, the story of reviving an old SYM Wolf Classic 150cc began with this simple yet heartfelt moment. It was a peaceful morning in the countryside. A red dirt road wound its way through endless green rice fields, carrying the gentle fragrance of young crops into every little alley. In that calm setting, a young girl named Lan appeared, petite in stature, but with eyes full of determination and passion. Lan was born and raised in the countryside, living a simple life tied to rice paddies and daily chores. Yet, within her heart burned a special love for old motorcycles, machines worn down by time, often dismissed as scrap metal. But to her, each carried a hidden soul and a story waiting to be reborn. That day, Lan decided to ride around the village in search of an old motorcycle to restore. After asking around, she was directed to a house at the far end of the village, where she was told a forgotten bike had been lying for years. When she stepped into the yard, her eyes immediately landed on a SYM Wolf Classic 150cc. Once a symbol of style and freedom, it now stood as a shadow of its past. The frame was eaten with rust, the fuel tank scarred with scratches and corrosion. The torn seat exposed yellowing foam, and the engine was covered in a thick layer of old grease and dust. The tires were hardened with caked mud, as if frozen in time. To most people, it was nothing but junk. But Lan's eyes lit up with excitement. She saw not a wreck, but a treasure. The owner, a middle-aged man, watched the girl carefully inspecting the bike. Half joking, half serious, he said, "No one's going to buy this old thing anymore. It just takes up space. But if you really want it, I'll let it go cheap. Maybe it'll have a new life with someone who still cares." Lan placed her hand gently on the rough frame and smiled softly. "I'll take it. I believe I can bring it back to life, maybe even better than before." She pushed the bike out of the yard, attracting curious stares from neighbors. Whispers followed her. What could that little girl possibly do with a pile of scrap metal? But Lan didn't mind. To her, this wasn't just a motorcycle. It was a challenge, a journey, and a chance to prove herself. Back home, Lan wasted no time. She pulled out a hose, filled a bucket with soapy water, and began scrubbing the bike. Under the midday sun, water splashed everywhere as her brush scraped against the metal. Years of grime slowly melted away, thick oil stains loosened and ran off with the water. The hardened mud on the wheels broke apart. The engine revealed its true shape. After nearly an hour of hard work, the motorcycle looked cleaner, still rough, but no longer a ghost of neglect. Then came the real work. Piece by piece, Lan began disassembling the motorcycle. Rusted bolts creaked and groaned as she loosened them, some so stubborn she had to force them out. The torn seat came off, followed by the fuel tank, headlights, turn signals. Every component was carefully placed on a tarp. Even the heavy engine block was removed for cleaning. Soon, all that remained in the yard was a bare frame standing alone under the sun. Lan grabbed sandpaper and worked tirelessly, scrubbing away thick layers of rust. The scraping sound echoed rhythmically as flakes of paint and rust fell away, revealing bare metal that slowly gleamed again. Sweat streamed down her forehead, her hands reddened and sore. Yet she pressed on. To her, this wasn't just mechanical labor. It was the act of breathing life back into something forgotten. Once the frame was smooth, Lan brought out cans of paint. She coated the frame in glossy black, sprayed the engine in metallic silver, and sealed everything with a protective clear coat. For the fuel tank, she chose a bold red, the color of passion, of fire, of a beating heart. The layers of paint went on evenly, each stroke precise and deliberate. She wasn't rushing, wasn't careless. Every move reflected her patience and love for the bike. When the paint dried, she began reassembly. One by one, the parts returned to their place. Freshly oiled wheels, firm suspension, carefully inspected brakes. The engine was cleaned, filled with fresh oil, the carburetor serviced, a new spark plug installed, throttle and clutch cables adjusted. Old, brittle wires were replaced with new ones, neatly wrapped and insulated. The engine now gleamed with a silver shine, looking as if it had just left the factory. Next came the red fuel tank, fitted snugly back onto the frame. A brand new seat with smooth black leather was installed. The shiny headlight and clear turn signals were mounted in place. The once broken-down motorcycle was now transformed into a stunning machine, modern in its freshness, yet timeless in its classic design. After many long days of sweat and dedication, the SYM Wolf Classic 150cc was reborn. From a heap of rust and decay, it had become a gleaming beast once more, proud and alive. Lan climbed onto the seat, turned the key, and pressed the starter. At first, the engine coughed and resisted, but after a few twists of the throttle, a deep, confident roar burst forth. The sound echoed through the yard, not just the revival of an engine, but the triumph of determination and belief. Lan laughed in joy and whispered to the bike, "Finally, you're alive again." The motorcycle rolled smoothly out of the yard, its tires crunching the red dirt road, leaving behind the steady rhythm of its engine and the radiant smile of the girl riding it. This was more than just a test ride. It was proof that with patience, effort, and love, even the most forgotten things can be restored to glory. Pulling back into the yard, Lan looked straight into the camera, her eyes shining with pride and happiness. She spoke warmly to the viewers. My friends, the restoration of the SYM Wolf Classic 150cc is now complete. What was once an old, forgotten motorcycle has been reborn into something full of life and beauty. Thank you so much for following me on this journey. If you enjoyed this video, please leave your thoughts and feelings in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell, so I'll have the motivation to keep making more restoration projects like this. And most importantly, what would you like to see in the next video? Share your ideas and I'll choose the most exciting one to bring to life. See you again in the next adventure.